It was the third Saturday in a row, and I woke up not to the calming silence of a suburban morning, but to the obnoxious sound of 80s power ballads and a crowd of strangers yelling from my backyard. Again, what on earth gives people this level of entitlement, walking onto private property like it's a public resort, demanding fun? I slammed my hand onto the alarm clock, the small, sharp pain doing nothing to quell the massive, throbbing migraine of stress that had become my permanent roommate. My neighbor, Brenda, who was the definitive archetype of a neighborhood Karen, had decided that since my house backed onto hers and I was gone most weekdays, my newly renovated, sparkling blue, 50,000-gallon pool was essentially an amenity for her weekly party rotation. The first time, I just thought it was a misunderstanding, a neighborly slip-up. I politely asked her to leave. The second time, she looked me dead in the eye, adjusted her oversized sunglasses, and actually asked, "Is this really such a big deal, Alex? We're just having a little fun. Don't be a spoil sport." Don't be a spoil sport? I mean, seriously? Who says that when they're trespassing? Today, I let out a low, weary breath that felt heavy and tasted faintly of stale resentment. I could hear the thwack of a beach ball hitting the expensive glass fence I'd put up for privacy. I crept to the window, pulling the edge of the blackout curtain back just enough to peer into the chaos. The air, already thick with the morning humidity, was now layered with the cloying scent of cheap citrus-flavored vodka and coconut sunscreen. They had brought inflatable swans. Inflatable swans. That was it. That was the line. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach, the kind you get just before you do something either spectacularly reckless or monumentally necessary. My frustration had been simmering for weeks, ever since I discovered the secondary twist. Not only were they using the pool, but the last party had resulted in them dumping half a cooler of melted ice cream and cheap champagne directly into the skimmer, totally clogging and ultimately damaging the filter system. That repair cost me nearly $2,000, and when I presented Brenda with the bill, she simply laughed. A grating, high-pitched sound that sounded like fingernails on a chalkboard, and told me to get a life. The sheer audacity. I walked down to the kitchen, the cool tile feeling briefly grounding beneath my feet, but my mind was already racing, ticking off every insult and violation. Justice. It was time to switch from being the polite, wronged homeowner to being a primal, vengeful god of backyard boundaries. I knew exactly where the emergency drain valve was located. A relic from the original 1960s pool plumbing I hadn't updated because, frankly, draining the entire pool was a task nobody ever needed. Until now, my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Was this insane? Was I about to commit a neighborhood felony? I didn't care. I opened the exterior shed door, the smell of chlorine and stored chemicals rushing out. The valve was dusty, a huge brass handle beneath the main pump. I knelt down, the rough concrete digging slightly into my knees, and felt the immense power of the house's water system in my hand. I could hear the party still going strong. A woman shrieking with laughter, a man attempting a dive with a clumsy splash. Were they drunk already? Unbelievable. I took one deep, shuddering gulp of the humid air, whispered a quick, "Karma's a bitch, Brenda," and pulled the drain handle. It wasn't instantly noticeable, which was the most excruciating part. The pump started roaring louder than usual, a deep, satisfied groan. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the water line dropped. I stayed in the shed, watching the pressure gauge, listening. After 10 minutes, the surface of the water had visibly dropped several inches, and the distant sound of the party started to change, a subtle shift in the acoustics. The cheers sounded closer to the ground. Another 15 minutes passed, which felt like an eternity. The water level was now seriously low, exposing the ugly, stained line where the tile met the plaster. I could hear confused questions now. "Hey, wait! Is the pool supposed to be this shallow? What is that smell?" The smell was the bottom of my pool, years of microalgae and sediment hitting the air. The smell of impending doom. I emerged from the shed just as the party reached critical mass. The water was down to about a foot deep, churned into a disgusting murky gray soup by the thrashing limbs of the remaining 20 or so guests. The swans were deflated, floating sadly like drowned dreams. Brenda, the queen of entitlement, was standing at the edge, hands on her hips, her expensive white linen pants already splashed with sludge. "Alex, what in the world are you doing?" Her voice sliced through the humid evening air like a rusty saw, filled with pure, incandescent rage. I walked slowly towards her, feeling calm for the first time in months, the sun setting behind me casting a long, satisfying shadow. "Oh, Brenda," I asked, keeping my voice level, almost conversational. "I'm just performing a necessary emergency pool maintenance. Remember? The maintenance I had to perform because someone destroyed my filter. You drained it?" she screeched, pointing a trembling, perfectly manicured finger at the mess. The last few people still attempting to swim had realized they were now wading through knee-deep mud and were struggling to climb out, their feet squelching and slipping on the exposed, slick plaster. One guy actually slipped and went down face-first into the sludge. The sight was absolutely cinematic. "Well, not quite drained yet," I replied, gesturing to the still-running pump. "But getting there. It seems my pool has reached maximum capacity for unwanted house guests, cheap alcohol, and utter lack of respect." I decided to relieve the pressure. Brenda's face went from angry red to a startling, mottled purple. "I'm calling the police. You can't do this. This is property damage," she bellowed, stomping her foot. A move she instantly regretted as a huge splash of foul, brown water shot up her pristine white shirt. I just shrugged. "Go ahead. I have the receipts for my filter replacement and a video from my security camera showing you and your friends trespassing and damaging private property. What exactly will you tell the police? That the pool owner stopped your illegal party by maintaining his own property." I paused, letting the pump's roar fill the silence. "The pool company is coming tomorrow to scoop out the sludge and sediment. All the mud and filth from the bottom. I recommend you and your friends step carefully on the way out. You wouldn't want to track any karma onto the sidewalk." The sight of her and her 20-odd friends, covered in slick brown mud, trying to navigate their way through my yard with a mixture of confusion and defeat, was perhaps the greatest single moment of justice I had ever experienced. The party was over. The silence, after they finally retreated, leaving a few sad, muddy footprints and the lingering smell of the swamp, was deafeningly sweet. Boundary setting isn't always easy or clean. Sometimes, you have to embrace the mess and literally drain the energy from those who try to steal your peace. Don't ever let someone else's misplaced entitlement define your happiness. Justice, I decided, felt exactly like the gritty, satisfying clunk of the drain valve being slammed shut, having completed its work. And maybe, just maybe, it smelled a little like muddy feet and vindication.